It's been quite some time since I made a video, but since I have more free time, I figured I'd give it another shot. My only hope in making this is so that the discussion surrounding the game in question can be a bit more nuanced. You see, a lot of games fall into this pattern of hype culture and then unrealistic expectations not being met, and I'd rather not see that happen to Shin Megami Tensei V, considering I think this game is in a kind of interesting place at the moment. So, I've noticed that people kind of have this linear mindset when it comes to like game direction, meaning that you see a longer game takes to come out since its announcement, then people believe obviously it's going to be better, so they kind of hype themselves off of that. If there were a graph, it probably looks something like this. Examples I can give would be Final Fantasy 15, The Last Guardian, even Persona 5 are kind of all victims of this. And in a more recent example, Cyberpunk 2077. And by that I mean, so for those that don't know, Cyberpunk was announced in 2012, only to release 8 years later. And while I don't think the game will be bad by any means, I've seen a good bit of dialogue on how the game looks underwhelming, and CDPR has already had to cut out a few notable features at the time of this recording. There could be more that gets cut. Hopefully that's not the case. Cyberpunk overpromised, and I know this might sound kind of crazy to say or to hear. In the case of SMT5, it's a bit better for Atlus to not say anything in this regard than it is to remove features that people were looking forward to a couple of months before the game comes out. Especially in the case of Cyberpunk, when that game has already had 2 delays. So this part right here actually wasn't in the script. I'm just saying to clarify something real quick. So I do think Atlus should show something. Maybe, something more concrete, and that's probably all I'm saying is that's probably one reason as to why they haven't shown anything. I believe that Atlus probably wants whatever they show to make sure that it's not something that is going to be changed heavily or altered or taken out, so they're not really giving you this kind of deceptive marketing type of thing. I'm just trying to kind of clarify, because I want people to think that Atlus doesn't never need to show anything or whatever. But on to the next part. My expectations for SMT5 are on the line of curiosity rather than hyper speculation, because I really don't feel that's needed at the moment, for me anyway. And LaRue did a great video on everything we know about Shin Megami Tensei V over on his channel, and one thing he pointed out is that the director of the game, Kazuyuki Mi, has stated that the team is putting 3 times the amount of work into each demon than they have any other title. Now, Persona and SMT are done by different teams, for those that didn't know, but for perspective, Persona 5 had around 192 personas. I'm sure with Royal it's up somewhere in the 200s, while Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse had over 400. If each of those are to be polished and kept to the standard we want them to be, then unfortunately that's just gonna take some time. And we've seen with Pokemon Sword and Shield, those games really don't need to be rushed. And the thing about Sword and Shield is those games reuse a lot of assets, despite Game Freak saying they didn't. And truthfully, in an ideal world, I still don't think Pokemon Sword and Shield would be out right now. I would say a best release for those games would be at a 2021 at the earliest release date. And in a sense, I believe that Yamai knows that all eyes are on SMT, because this is the debut of a mainline SMT game on a console in almost 2 decades, and really the first HD SMT game ever, besides the mobile game. Since we've talked a bit about the game before it's come out, I want to do something a bit different here and talk about what happens to SMT5 after it comes out. Because opinions on the game prior to release and post-release change quite a bit. My worry with Shin Megami Tensei V before launch, just let me get this out of the way, isn't that Atlus isn't listening to fans. It's actually that they are. You see, we're long overdue for information about the game, but what if Atlus overshares with information? This actually happens quite a lot, not just in games, but in almost any form of media. You see, in games in particular, games will go radio silent for a while, and then there's just a flood of information. So much so that people feel the entire plot of the game has been spoiled. To give a more recent example, the 7 remake is probably, the most, apt for this comparison. Sadly, how much Atlus decides to share with us is not in our control. We can only hope that whatever they do decide to share doesn't reveal too much about the game. It's kind of like petty almost, you've been asking for the game for so much, and they're like, okay, you want to know the game? So, well, here's everything. Now stop asking me. That type of thing. But what happens after release kind of is. You see, you know how it goes. A long-awaited game is released, and people enjoy it for a time. A couple months go by, and then opinions suddenly flip. Now, most people would probably attribute that to the honeymoon phase wearing off, and part of that is true, but I think it's a bit more than that. You see, in recent years, I kind of attribute this to games staying in the public consciousness for too long. So there's this feeling of burnout after the initial launch period. We're in this culture to where everything is analyzed and put under a more critical eye from both fans and reviewers alike. And this isn't to say that games shouldn't be critiqued. By all means, do that. Hell, I do that on this very channel. But going forward, I'd like to not be part of the problem that is so much more contrarianism. And I'd like to provide actual better, critique that can show you how I may have arrived at something rather than just saying, hey, this thing is bad and isn't as good as you think it is, or something along those lines. All in all, I just think it'd be very underwhelming after all this time waiting for Shin Megami Tensei V. The enthusiasm dies down and it just goes through another cycle like every other game until we wait for the next SMT game and just repeat it again. Thanks for watching.